What do you do if you notice that one of your colleagues or teammates is being treated poorly by someone else on the team, or especially if they're being treated poorly by their boss? It's one of those situations where you can add a lot of value and really help someone by not letting them suffer in solitude. But what can you do? Let's walk through a few different kind of escalating opportunities. The first thing you can do is notice and validate what they're feeling. They might be feeling like, is this just me? Am I going nuts? And so when you say, hey, I didn't love the way Dennis treated you in the meeting today, how did you experience that? That just gives them a safe place. And having a safe place means so much. So the very first thing you can do is just notice and validate. The next thing you can do is listen and empathize. Now, when you notice and validate, you may get this flood of them sharing stories or emotions or how they're experiencing it, or you might get a trickle. So you want to make sure you let them set the pace. You want to be on the listening side. So you could ask the odd question, but then for the most part, stay quiet. You want to just support them with your open body language, with the odd, oh, wow, that sucks, but not to really get in the way. So the key thing in the second step is to just listen and empathize. A third thing I want you to think about is not to superimpose your feelings or your values onto them. That's not helpful. So thinking about, oh, if someone did that to me, I'd be so mad. Well, that's your experience, but it's not their experience. What you want to do in supporting your friend is not tell them how you feel, but it's actually to help them figure out how they feel. So asking those questions and listening effectively is much better than telling them, your reaction or what they should be feeling or what they should be doing. Another thing you can do is help them challenge and reframe how they're thinking about the situation. So when we're treated badly, it's very easy to go from one or two instances into thinking this whole relationship is ruined. And so helping people think about, is this something where it's something wrong with you, it's never going to be rectified, you're doomed? Or more likely, is it something situational, something that could change? Because changing your behavior, that feels surmountable, that feels doable, but changing who you are doesn't. So as you ask questions and help them reframe and see, is this that, I know you're saying you think the boss thinks you're stupid. Is it just that in this particular piece of work, you weren't of the quality or the standard that they were looking for? What if you learned a little bit more, fix this? So asking questions and challenging defeatist thinking to help them think about it more situationally and less in terms of their character or their capability. The final thing you can do without talking to anybody other than the colleague who's being treated poorly is to offer to provide some feedback and coaching on what they're going to do next. So if the boss was very critical and dismissive about a piece of work they did, you can say, hey, I would love to take a look at your next draft. Let me think about it and see if there are any things that I would change before you hand it back to them. Or if the person is going to go and address a colleague who's been treating them poorly, you could say, why don't you just, dry run that with me for a minute? How are you going to broach it? What are you going to say? I'll do my best to anticipate how they react. So providing that feedback or a safe place to practice, that's a really helpful thing you can do for the person who's figuring out, okay, how am I going to cope with this on my own? So it's just, you're letting them stay in control. You're not taking over for them. You're not rescuing them, but you're providing a little support to make that easier. If you're going to get involved directly, one of the things you can do is block and tackle. So if you see the bad behavior, the abusive behavior, or just the unfriendly, unkind behavior, if you see it yourself, you can jump in. So for example, if somebody's interrupting, you can just say, oh, hang on, I'd like to hear the end of that. If they're shooting down your colleagues' ideas, you can say, I think that's worth having a full hearing. I'm interested to hear that. Can we go back? What you're doing is you're loaning your credibility, you're creating a safe space for your colleague, and you're signaling to either your boss or your teammates that that's not okay. That's not how we treat one another. Now, you're not doing it in a way that, gets yourself in trouble by saying like, you need to stop that. But you are blocking and tackling to make sure that they can get through with the point they were trying to make. A second thing you can do if you want to get involved directly is you can alert and inform people of what's going on. So sometimes bad behavior or poor treatment is happening and nobody else knows. It's very insular within your team. And because if that's your boss, everybody's a little worried about saying anything, it can be very helpful if instead of the person on the receiving end of the abuse has to say something, that you say something for them. So if there's another team member who has great credibility with the boss or with the person who's being nasty, you might speak with them and say, what do you think this is about? And what advice would you give Sally about how to manage this? Or is there anything she could do differently? Those are the kinds of things you can do to just alert people that somebody is struggling, that they need some help. Maybe that person then will be willing to block and tackle on her behalf as well. It may also be that alert and inform is to human resources. It may be that this is something that qualifies as discrimination or an abuse of power. And in those situations, it's really valuable if you can give a heads up. Now, I always advise when you are in this alert and inform situation, that's exactly what you're doing. We don't want to tattle. We don't want to create that kind of gossiping or complaining about your boss. We want to go looking for advice. So this is what I see happening. What would you advise? How would you coach me to help my colleague? How would you coach my colleague? And so you're asking, sort of maintaining that accountability to handle this situation as opposed to kind of tattling and expecting somebody else to go get the person in trouble. So it's a better tactic when you're trying to provide support for someone than just complaining about somebody who's abusive or behaving badly. And finally, sometimes it's all too much for your colleague to endure, and they may leave the team or leave the organization altogether. Well, in that case, you can be so helpful to them by connecting and recommending and referring them to places, opening up your network. You can provide huge help in helping them sort of reflect on and think about what did they learn from this bad experience. You may be able to share some insights about the kind of environments that might work better for them and things to avoid. But by showing them that even if they're not your teammate anymore, you still care about them, you feel badly about what happened, you don't want that to reflect on you, and you don't want them to think that everyone on the team felt the same way about them. So when you give them that kind of helpful insight about their strengths, when you open up your network or refer them or make connections, all of those things really show how much you care. And it's such a positive thing you can do because, of course, most people are not kind of bad. Most people struggle in a certain role or they have poor fit with some other teammate or boss, but they may go on and thrive somewhere else. And so you maintaining that connection, supporting them through the roughest time is just something that relationship will probably be so valuable to you for the rest of your career. So it's a difficult situation when you notice that it's not you who's being treated poorly, but one of your colleagues. There are lots of things you can do. The first base level is just be a safe place for them to process this and a smiling face to say, I've got your back. Then there are ways that you can intervene either directly with the person who's behaving badly or with other people who may be able to help and change things. And ultimately, if the person leaves, it may be that you just support them as a friend and former colleague, and that relationship is something you benefit from for years to come. But don't be a bystander. Don't leave people to suffer in solitude. Instead, do something to help the teammate who's being treated badly. Okay, more about how to deal with those interpersonal kind of conflicts, you'll find that here.